Tim,
Okay,
we're
I'm
here.
ready. Let's
Welcome
go.
podcast, man. Let's go.
Let's do
I'm
this
amped up
thing.
on this end. How are you on that end?
I'm fired up as well. I've had an interesting week. I just got back from this like long like around the world globe journey to Azerbaijan where I saw like an F1 race. And I got back. It's like Monday, I was broken. Like didn't know where I was. Tuesday better, Wednesday better, Thursday, which is today. I'm in it. I'm back in it to win it. So it's been a good day so far.
Awesome. Love it. What is your random? I didn't think to ask this, but now that you mentioned, like, when you think of like business, do you take that on the road with you? Are you hardcore in it? Do you try to push off a lot of emails and stuff when you're traveling and just say, hey, that's in the background until I get back? How do you think about that?
In my experience, if you try to turn it off when you're on the road, it just builds up and is terrible when you get back. So I got some good advice years ago that was like, if you just spend an hour a day and keep it under control, that's enough not to mess with your travel, and it's enough that you, when you get back, things are good and in shape. And it's very rare that you actually have something that you have to deal with when you're out traveling. This is for personal travel. If I'm on like business travel, then I'm just going full tilt. But in this
Yeah.
case, it was like actually what I found was I could do a lot of the fun stuff that I couldn't do when I was back home.
Hmm.
And so this sounds super dorky, probably is super dorky. So it's like I created a bunch of like new AI driven applications and this framework that we have that we've been building. And it was like the perfect place to do it because I was like 11 time zones off. Nobody could bother me.
That's
But
true.
the flip side was it now it's like all of a sudden I was on like basically like India local time. And so all the developers we had in India were like, hey, what's up? Let's Slack you. But again, the short answer is I find if you do like an hour and a bit a day and just keep up, it's way, way better and more relaxing than trying to just shut it all down.
I like that. No, that's a good point. What are you focused on right now? Like, what are you excited? You mentioned you're kind of working on some different project. What are you excited about?
Yeah, so my deal, I've got a parent company called 1 to 100, which is 1 to 100.com with the numbers rather than all spelled out. And so 1 to 100 initially started about a year ago when I was rolling out of what I had done for 25 years, which is level access, as okay, you built a SaaS company from zero past $100 million in ARR. That's a pretty rare thing. Cool. Let's just do some very basic like corporate therapy and like let's
Okay.
get the stuff that you had in your head out and onto paper, and you've learned some lessons and you have some models and some operating approaches, like let's put them into place. And so initially 1 to 100 was that let's build essentially like a manual and a set of manuals around how do you scale particularly B2B SaaS companies. And the concept behind that is you probably break them up into discrete phases. Startup phase, which is like pre about $1 million in ARR, a repeatability phase, which is 1 to 10, and then sort of other phases as you go on from there. So 1 to 100 started with that. It's like, okay, take all this stuff and get it out and build like an
Mm.
operating manual for it. And then you don't have to rebuild the stuff that you've done before. As I was doing that, I was also getting deeper and deeper into generative AI. And what that started to evolve to is, well, instead of having static manuals, which is useful, you could probably build a set of tools that allow you to actually generate all the stuff that you're talking about.
Okay.
So as an example, there's the strategy framework that we have where you're generating a couple of primary points of strategy, the mission of the company, the vision of the company, definition of the problem, et cetera. And what I found is those are very easy to generate in conjunction with AI versus either on your own or letting the
Right.
AI do it. So an iterative loop with you working with an LLM actually gets you a pretty refined problem definition, and then you can go on and define people and so on. So what that's evolved to is more and more, okay, let's take the learnings and let's build out essentially an operating system around it. Let's build out a set of tools that B2B founders, B2B SaaS founders in particular, but general B2B founders can also use to take an idea, refine that idea, turn that idea into a definition of what you want to build in software, then actually go and build the MVPs of the software. And then on a separate thread, take that idea and now then build out a credible go-to-market plan and then go execute it. So it is becoming a set of AI-driven tools to allow you to quickly take an idea and ultimately launch a business at the end of it. And I would say
Oh,
business, which is different than app. So you get tools like Lovable and N8N and stuff like that, and those are good for prototyping. But in the B2B SaaS space, like you can't come into a company and be like, yeah, I have a lovable app. Here you go. Like pay
Yeah.
me 25 grand for it. Like you got to have security. It's got to integrate with their SSO systems.
Right.
It's got to have logging. It's all this stuff. And so what my point of view was is, hey, there's a space in the market for that, for control software that helps you build sort of the idea of it, then get
Mhm.
everybody on the same page about the idea, translate that into strategies, objectives, then actual execution tactics, and the same thing that you can do with a framework of software. So it's a long answer about what I'm working on now, but I'm basically working on that, the higher level controls at the 1/100 level that allow you to get to a fully functioning company
Yeah.
quickly. And then what I have found is I do well partnering with entrepreneurs on launching those things also. And so in the market, I'll find people that have an idea, that are domain experts in a particular place, that know how to sell into a market. Those are kind of the two big requirements,
Mhm.
but they have no idea what it takes to actually build B2B SaaS software. And so what I'll do is I'll partner with them and say, okay, we'll take your idea, we'll get the software out there, we'll launch it, we'll run the technical teams for you. You can then go run the go-to-market systems and playbooks. And we have playbooks for that that they can use, so they're not just like left to their own devices.
Right.
But that model actually works well. So mostly what I'm finding is I do well working with entrepreneurs that want to launch business or at later stages companies, and they want to analyze those businesses and see where they can go faster.
Awesome.
And so I've got about 5 companies sort of in the hopper right now. My goal is to get it to the point though where you can go from concept to a fully formed launch business in, a matter of days. And the idea behind that would be it gets you more data faster on what companies are going to work with the sort of general portfolio theory of, we're going to take 10 shots on goal. If we can be higher quality in the companies we produce, right now it's like 1 of 10 succeeds is kind of your venture capital outcomes. If we
Right.
could have 3 or 4 succeed of the 10, it's still a 30 or 40% hit rate, but massively larger
Oh.
than what you have currently in the market.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Wow. That sounds. You got a lot on the plate there, which is nice, but I'm sure it keeps you busy
It,
throughout the day.
it is very intellectually stimulating,
Yeah.
and I'm in a position in my career where I exited twice. I have enough money to sort of pay for my life, and I'm stable, and the kids are going to college, and the mortgage paid, and all that. And so
Yeah.
now it's like I'm playing with the house money. And so if you're playing with the house money, you're kind of like you might as well bet big.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to get some big bets out there on the table of stuff that either we've created first party, or again we've partnered with folks to push out
Yeah.
there as well.
And you might as well do something that jacks you up, right? To doing something that inspires you and kind of as a mission, it seems like as well.
Yeah, I like working with founders that are driven, that want to build something, but just haven't done it before, because that was me 25 years ago.
Right.
And there's sort of one prevailing school of thought is, hey, the founders don't want you messing with the way that they run the business, and they don't want you in there. They want you to give them capital and give them advice when they ask, and that's it. And that's sort of this hands-off model. My experience is the exact opposite. Actually, most founders want a ton of direction.
Mhm.
They don't want to go sort through 80, Google results and pages and read LLM. They just want to be like, dude, this is what I should do.
Right.
And 80% of what you got to do to run a business falls into that category. It's like, you don't need to think about how to set up finance. You just set up a standard finance model. You don't need to set up HR. You set up a standard HR model. That list goes on for a bunch of the supporting functions. Whereas an entrepreneur, you need to spend your time is selling stuff and making sure that you're building features that fit the product, right? That solve actual problems people are willing to pay for. And what I found is I spent 80% of my time on the dumb admin stuff of setting up and running a company, and 20% on the stuff that made a difference in the company.
Yeah.
And so my thesis here is you can flip that, and you can do it in a highly capital efficient fashion, which again just lets you get more shots on goal.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, just someone early trying to build, my business, like, and talking with other founders, like, yeah, I think that's why it's so important. Like, I would rather pay more for coaching from someone that's done it a few times and they've kind of shaked out the cobwebs and the bad stuff, and they can help you go quicker versus just kind of figuring it out on your own. Like, you might be able to do it, but as you kind of struggled through that probably the first handful of years growing your first business, right? It takes time.
Yeah, you can figure out a lot of stuff on your own because
Sure.
you're a smart founder and you're driven. Should
Right.
you be figuring that stuff out is a
Right.
different question. And on the topic of coaching, it's interesting. So it's like I've got a coach. I like her. She's great. She is not a B2B SaaS like CEO. She's not scaled companies. So my coaching I get from her is like, what are you doing? Did you do the thing you told me about before? How does that make you feel? Right? It's
Right.
like somewhere between like coaching and therapy, and it's helpful.
Right.
But what I want is someone that's like, I got all the data on your company because I pulled the latest P&Ls and I pulled the latest metrics report. Last time you were here, this time you're here. Clearly, these are the three operational problems that you have. Let's go devise strategies to implement those operational problems. And then
Right.
a month from now, come back and tell me how you did on that. So I think the sort of product there or the solution there that I'd like to steer towards under this 1-100 umbrella is highly context aware operational driven coaching. And
Mhm.
so what you will lose in that is some of the emotional support you can get from a coach and some of the softer skills. But what I think you gain from that is a lot of highly specific, very detailed advice for your business that again leverages a lot of the LLM models to get that out much faster because
Yeah.
we can suck in all the data on your business. We can look at all the operational data. We can compare that to manuals. So we can come up with some ideas that in human discussions, you can then very quickly narrow that down and say, okay, here are the three highest impact things that I think we should go after.
Mm.
And so if you kind of combine all that stuff together and then you made it into what I would call an operating framework, which is different from a strategy framework, not only do you know what you're doing, you have a highly structured way of going after what you're doing
Mm.
and implementing it in a very detailed fashion.
Yeah. Well, we'll go in that a little bit deeper. I want to go into rapid fire though. Make sure
Rapid
we
fire, bring it.
make sure we hit you on these. All right, here we go. So 5 questions. We'll go deeper. These aren't actually rapid fire always, but here you go. First one. Do you plan your year out and or take a different approach to goal setting?
Well, so I'll give you a personal answer and a professional answer. On a personal basis, I set myself objectives for the year. I used to write a full-on manifesto each year.
Hmm.
That was a little bit overweight for what I needed. But at the beginning of the year, I'll sit down and I'll say, yeah, here's the broadly the stuff that I want to accomplish this year with my family, with my personal life and health, and then kind of professionally as well, or tend to be the three big categories. And then on a corporate basis, if you're running a company, you have to plan out your year. Now, the smaller the company is, the less you're going to be effective at that. But the motion of planning out the year is useful to be able to say, look, on this annual basis, here are the financial targets that I want to hit, and the operating targets I want to hit, and then the narrative targets. And those are the two big components of any good annual plan. Like, how do you want to do operationally? And then how do you want to grow and change the business over time? And if you think about the like working in the business on the business,
Mhm.
the operational targets are working in the business. That is, are we running the business effectively? And then the working on the business are more of the narrative targets. And those tend to be translated in software companies into software roadmaps as well,
Mm.
but can also be initiatives that you run and things like that.
Right.
Generally speaking, I would tell you, even in small companies, what planning to fail is failing to plan, or failing to plan is planning to fail, right?
Right.
The other way around. And that's pretty true because the problem is if you don't end up with a plan, whatever comes along your way, whatever you accomplish, you will say is victory because you're a human being and you don't want to like sit there and beat yourself up. You want to feel like you're making progress. Versus having a plan and having very specific operating targets for that, then you're forced to actually quantitatively measure your success.
Yeah.
And while that's not fun, it is quite useful.
Yeah. It's kind of the ship leaving the port. If you don't have some sort of direction, who the hell knows where you might just go in circles, right? So it's helpful to have some of those objectives, as you're saying, even mapped out at a broad stroke. At least you're going right direction. Is that fair?
Correct. And then what the thing that most entrepreneurs underestimate that also is quite powerful is if your goals and objectives aren't clear, they are certainly not clear to the people that you are bringing on your team.
Mm.
And all of them are then
Sure.
spending time. It's not so much that they're not coordinated in their effort, although that is an issue. It's also that existentially they start to ask themselves the questions like, what is this company trying to accomplish? Am I at the right place? Do I need to go look
Right.
for another job, et cetera? And so by having a strategy that's crystal clear and communicated, and then having an operating plan that's crystal clear and communicated, you can culturally tell people, hey, it's okay if we don't hit these targets and it's okay to fail, but we want to learn from them. but a lack of them will make it very difficult for you to retain people, let alone recruit them as well.
That's a good point. Very good point. All right. Number 2 here. What's your go-to mantra or reminder when things get hard?
I'm not going to get the quote right, but it's nothing can take the place of persistence. Talent will not unrecognize talent as a proverb. There's a couple other ones. It's a Calvin Coolidge quote, but it ends with persistence and determination alone are omnipotent. So persistence and determination alone are omnipotent.
Why that one? Why when did you uncover that? Or why did that, stick?
So starting a company sucks, and it is a grind. It is not easy. It is very difficult. No one will tell you congratulations. You will not get any positive external affirmation. It is not something that a healthy person does. And one of the things you have to have is the fortitude to get through the grind. You have
Right.
to truly believe that ultimately your persistence will be rewarded, that persistence and determination alone are omnipotent. And so that soldiering on sort of mentality is one that you want to reinforce. Because again, starting a company is a terrible decision. Like it is
Yeah.
very unlikely to be successful. It is very emotionally difficult. It will probably damage you psychologically in ways that you're not even aware of yet.
Yeah.
And so it's not for the faint of heart. And unfortunately, there really isn't a fast path to success. So this gets into sort of a separate topic, but it's a good sign. So it's like media stories of overnight successes are awesome. They make great stories, and media stories of the sort of like single soul entrepreneur that is all powerful and somehow magically makes it work there. And you see that like Elon Musk's of the world, the Bill Gates of the world, the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world. But every single one of those guys will tell you it's like they got a team of 1,000 people that they have figured out how to get to go in a direction. And they are singular geniuses. It doesn't take anything away from them. But they're all very, very team-oriented individuals. And so just understanding that like there are limits to the power that you alone have. And it's about how do you get other people to come along on the journey with you and grind with you.
Yeah. All right, cool. I like that. I never heard that quote before. So there you go. Oh, okay. This is sort of maybe you tip the scale a little bit or not. What's your next just get started moment? Anything you are secretly working on?
Well, I guess it won't be secret after this. I've got 3 companies that are in the hopper to come out hopefully this year. One is called Cresso AI, which is about getting good data on people and companies and
Mhm.
modeling what markets you want to go after and what customers in those markets would, based on buying signals that you have, be good matches for you now. So that one is launching. I've got another one called Graviton that I'm actually doing with a mutual friend of ours, Brian Wish,
Okay.
which is about building software for personal brands and then building some companies on top of that. And then I've got another one that I've actually kind of conceptualized, which would be a active insurance product in the old space I used to work in, which is digital accessibility,
Hmm.
and eventually it'll be a digital compliance product as a whole, which is your website, your mobile apps, all your digital endpoints actually have some real material legal risk for you these days. Like privacy risk is kind of the most
Yeah.
obvious one, but accessibility risk is another good example of that. Security risk people know, and a lot of organizations end up paying a lot of money for insurance products that really are just financial instruments. And I think we can do better than that.
Awesome. That's cool. You got a lot in your plate, man. I love it. Makes it
Keep it
fun.
exciting.
There you go. All right. Let's get this one here. What's the most humbling setback you've faced as a founder?
Dude, I don't know what the most humbling setback I faced as the founder. The one that comes to mind was I just got like, we were early on at level and I got like chewed out by a customer. And I was like on the verge of tears because I didn't go into the call prepared for it. So like none of my emotional guards were up, and she just punched me like right in the face. And she was right in doing it. Like we were failing as a company, and that one threw me for a loop. So that's the one that comes to mind in most cases. I think it's humbling when you have to leave behind like the company that you started.
Mm.
When you both say, look, I'm not the right person to carry this on anymore, and it's not the right time of life to do it. I don't know if that's humbling so much as that is just difficult for anyone to have to
Yeah.
go through that. And I delayed it as long as I could. I got it to 100 million, but I'm not the person to take that company to 250 million and a half billion. And some founders are, and I am much more stage specific, but I think I just like the earlier stages more.
Yeah.
But I don't know so much if that's humbling or if that's more a reflection of what I'd like to think I have, which is pretty deep seated humility.
Mm.
And one of the facets I find in all founders that scale well is combination of curiosity and humility. So like
Yeah.
they constantly want to learn more, and they're really not like tied to the fact that they know how to do it.
Yeah.
And sometimes that actually is counterproductive because in a lot of cases, as you go further in your career, you actually do know how to do it. And you do have a point of view where you have to say, no, we're going to do it this way.
Mm.
And so one of the things I've learned is to kind of balance that to try to take your ego out of the equation when you do have to actually give command and control decisions and say, no, we're going to do it this way for this reason.
Yeah.
So that's a longer answer than strictly
No.
required, but gives you a flavor, if you will.
No, that's well said. I love that. And I think even when you were saying that made me think probably your growth, and I could be wrong, but 25 years ago, maybe there was an ego there. We're younger. We're like, oh yeah, I can scale this to a billion. I could do, and then eventually you figure out, oh, maybe that's not, again, I'm not the right fit. There's someone better suited. I can do other things in this world. Like, don't you grow over time and realize that, here's the lane I want to stick in because of these reasons that I didn't know 25 years ago. But there is you
I,
mentioned humility that kind of aligns with that.
that's definitely one dynamic. The other dynamic is when you start these companies, like you've heard the stories of these like titans who have grown these billion-dollar companies seemingly
Yeah.
overnight and have crushed it. You're like, well, I could go do that. They did it.
Right.
But you don't appreciate the constellation of factors that aligned for a company like that to appear.
Yeah.
And no matter how great those people are, they're also very lucky to have started those companies at the right time.
Yeah.
And you simply cannot create those things. So there's a lot of different factors of that. I think the bigger factors would be you also start to appreciate how critical it is to not just pick the right market, but pick the right market at the right time
Mhm.
with the right solution. And all of those things cannot go your way. So we actually picked a good marketed level, but we were like probably 15 years too early to market.
Okay.
And so we grew, but we really didn't have an opportunity to grow very quickly just because the demand wasn't there. And
Yeah.
so understanding what is a signal of actual demand and an actual problem that people are willing to pay money for versus something people will tell you is an annoyance, but they're never going to actually pay you a dime for it.
Yeah. That's a really good point. All right. Last question. How do you know when it's time to quit versus push through? This is kind of
Uh,
aligning where we're going with this discussion in just a minute. So maybe that's a nice lead into
well,
it.
the answer is always push through, of course.
Yeah.
In general, like it's time to quit. Like, so in the context of business, if people are not willing to pay you money for your solution, you don't have a real business. And if you can't retain those people over time, you don't have a real business. So the answer that I typically come back to for like, when is a business something that should quit? It really comes down to those two things. It's like, if you can't get people to buy stuff from you or actually spend money, no matter what they're saying, like that's not a business. That's a project or a hobby. Maybe it's a great
Right.
one, but it's not a business. But then the flip side of it, which a lot of people forget, is they have to keep paying you money for that over time. In
Yeah.
software businesses, obviously different businesses can be project based. And so the second half of it is I can't keep a customer. You can get a lot of customers that want to spend money with you initially, but then they stop spending money with you or they float off. That also means you probably don't actually have the thing that you think you have. And then outside of that, it's bigger factors of, hey, if we had 100% of the customers in this market, how big would we be? Do I want to do that with my life? Is it worth doing it with my life? Do I like it? Is it interesting? Am I passionate about it? I wasn't particularly passionate about my first company, but I had an opportunity to learn a ton of stuff in like the compressed period of 25 years, but over
Yeah.
25 years.
Right.
But that was very much a job versus now everything I start, I'm like pretty geeked out on the technology. Like I'm excited to build something and show it to people.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to be said for excitement. But I think even the most passionate entrepreneurs, like you're going to get on the grind. And if you're not ready to grind, like your passion isn't going to get you through the grind.
Yeah.
Discipline and grit is going to get you through the grind. So you
Yeah.
could be as excited in the world to start your online Pokemon trading company. But when you're like debugging code with like your developers at 10 p.m. for the 80th day, like, I don't know if your passion for Pokemon is going to really carry you through that moment.
Yeah, I love that. That's a good point. I want to go back to what you just said earlier because so you mentioned about, yeah, if you're not making money, eventually you're not going to have a business. But what is that? And I don't know if there's an exact answer here, so I'll talk through the question. But like, how long should people, we'll use the word struggle to try to find their product market fit, maybe try to find the right clients? Maybe they are giving their product away, they do free trials, whatever it is. Like, how long should they try to say, all right, I'm going to see if this works without actually maybe bringing in money? Or as you're saying, maybe there's a lot of churn in the process. Like, when do they ultimately be like, is it 3 months, 6 months, a year of like, okay, I'm not making money, I need to pull the ripcord on this? Is there any indicators they should think about? Does that make any sense the way I'm asking it?
It does. So my first answer is it always takes a lot longer than you think. And some of that is naivety. If you're a first time entrepreneur, you haven't done it before, so you don't actually know how long it takes. And the answer is it takes a while. And then the second is you're an entrepreneur, so you're inherently optimistic. You always think it's going to go faster than you need.
Yeah.
My experience is to actually see if these companies works takes about 3 years.
Wow.
And so 6 months, like I'm going to get an MVP out and I'm going to see if it works. I'm going to get some signals of demand. All those things are correct. But to get an actual functioning company in B2B SaaS where people are willing to pay you like 25 grand for your product, like it takes a while. A slightly more mathematical answer to you is your sales pipeline has a certain amount of time. It's going to take your customers 120 days to make a decision. Your marketing pipeline has a certain amount of time. It's going to take 30 days before they're ready to have a sales conversation with you. So minimally one opportunity, you at least have to have 150 days from the time that you acquire that opportunity to the time that you actually close it. And you have to have multiple opportunities to actually have a chance to close one. If you have a 25% close rate, you got to get 4. They don't all happen at the same time, they stack up. So really quickly, just running a sales process is going to take 6 to 7 months. And then you got to fill that sales pipeline beforehand, and you got to have software that is demoable by the time they hit the sales pipeline. So like real quickly, like you could see, it probably takes on the order of about 2 years to really determine if this thing is going to work or not. You can do stuff to make that faster. You can get validation signals earlier on in the process. There are some cool techniques to do that you'll see people write about. You can sell founders subscriptions up front where you give them long-term access, sometimes lifetime access for a price. They sort of co-fund it. That's a good way to get some demand signals as well. You can get private betas running earlier. So there are things you can do to kind of shrink that. But again, at the end of the day, for most enterprise motion companies, like it's going to come down to sales cycle. The sales cycle takes a while, and the marketing pre-sales cycle takes a while. So like, unless you have a fair amount of time, you're probably going to run out the clock on stuff.
What's your philosophy if we're talking about sales for a second? Do you like folks going after one market, one industry? Do you like them kind of broad brush to start and then niching down where they find some successes? How do you think about it from that standpoint?
Yeah, you will never make the error of going too narrow. You will only make the error of going too broad. So you will only ever sell to too many people, not enough. So my general recommendation for early stage companies is you are going to pick a single target segment that is well defined down to a highly detailed set of firmographic profiles, a highly detailed buyer profile, and then potentially technographic signals you can pick up as well. The size of that we can debate, and it's company specific. So you might pick like 5,000 customers that you're going to target in an ICP. It might be 10,000. It's probably on the order of thousands, again, just because of buying timing and conversions and things like that.
Sure.
And so you got to pick a size that makes sense. But you will, it is very unlikely you will pick too narrow of it. Now you might pick the wrong ICP.
Right.
And so that'll cost you a ton of time. And so you do want to do the things you're generally going to hear. You want to run interviews with people. You want to ask them where their budget's going to come from. How much money would they be willing to spend on it? If I had a working solution tomorrow, would you be willing to pay 25K for it? What's the process of that? Is it a budget that you have? You generally want to look at something where you are replacing a budget rather than creating a budget de novo, which is, hey, I already spend money on this. This is a more efficient way to spend money on this. That's a much better market than a net new. The other dynamic on timing, which comes back to math of how long it takes, is in a certain year, only some percentage of your market is going to be in market for a solution. And 20% to 10% is probably a good starting point. Said differently, if you invert that, that means your entire market will actually only go out and look for a solution once in the course of 5 years, is 20%, or once in the course of 10 years is a 10% market.
Right.
So you have to pick a big enough set of customers that you're going after, such that between your win rate, the number of deals that you want to hit, and how often your customers come to market, you're actually getting it. So if you have a 25% win rate and you need to win 10 deals, you got to source 40 deals, right, to win those number of deals. Of the 40 deals, if your market is only coming, or if customers are only coming to market once in every 5 years, right? Okay, well, 40 times 5, that means I've got to have at least 200 customers in the conversation to even potentially have a shot of closing 5 deals once this is all over. So when you think about all of that math, it actually ends up being that you got to cast a pretty wide net. The reality is, in early stage companies, you probably want to target 1,000 to 2,000 accounts, and minimally, and you're better starting with the scenario where you have a lot of people that want to actually see it, like you've overshot, and people are like ready to go, and you can't service them, because you could take them and put them in a private beta program, and you can incubate them for longer, and so there's like other techniques there. But your risk is actually not that. Your risk is you're going to get 200 customers, but you'll get 200 prospects, but they're going to be 200 prospects from 20 different industries.
Right.
And then you don't actually have 200 prospects from 20 different industries. You have 10 prospects in 20 different markets, each of which are going to want a different flavor of your solution and need to be sold to in a different way and talked to in a different way. And that will make you go insane. It's very difficult to run those sales processes.
Is that, and talking just while we're on that topic, maybe throw out whatever's coming to mind, blind spots, we can call it mistakes early on. One I've seen, I've been in startups where, hey, we got the big client and they want us to build out this feature that they specifically need, but it doesn't service the other 95% of the market we're going after. I don't know if you see that as a mistake. I guess I saw that, or at least seemed like it, but I'm kind of curious what you think about for these, whether it's the 0 to 1 businesses that are trying to get to 1 to 100, or just in general. Just kind of curious your thoughts on some of those things people are making big wise.
Yeah, the biggest mistake is, again, you're too broad, you're not too narrow, and you have the attitude of, we need revenue at all costs, so we're going to take any customer that comes in the door that has a pulse and has a budget. So that's one. So the way to combat that is you say very deliberately, here is one market, maybe 2 that we're targeting that are discrete, well-defined, and big enough to still mathematically give us the outcome that we want. Right off the bat, in my experience, 80% of startups will fail to hit that. They won't do the math. They're just like, anybody that comes, we're going to sell to. Right. That, for a bunch of reasons, is a bad idea. There is a dynamic in the market that you're explaining, which is a large company that has budget will find a small company that they can effectively control to build something that they can't get built with their own internal IT department.
Right.
I'm more fluid on that. If somebody truly wants to pay me $250,000 to build a feature that's highly specific for them, and I can build that feature for 10 grand, knock yourself out. Here's your feature. I'll take the money. I'm not as worried about it. What you have to do in that scenario, though, is be hyper specific on what you're building for them. And then if they come back to you and say, hey, I want something else, you say, great, that's a change order. That's going to be another $250,000 or whatever it is. Right. And that may actually be a good deal for you and the large customer. The reason that can actually be a good deal, even though the common advice would be don't do it, is there is a ton of value in having that big customer out there.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
not only are you extracting dollars to keep your business alive, and that's real, you are going to extract from them a case study where they say, yeah, it was great working with these people. They were awesome. They built us this killer piece of software. They do have a bunch of knowledge. Some component of your core solution is relevant to them. So they do have a bunch of knowledge on how to deploy your core solution, et cetera. So my point there is not to give you sort of an ambiguous answer. It's dangerous, but everything's dangerous at like the early levels of scale. And so you got to be thoughtful about how you do it. You got to set the right expectations. But if you can extract them as a customer that's a paying customer at a higher ARR rate, all of that will accrue to your bottom line, like and the enterprise value that you've created. So it's not an insane strategy. And every enterprise customer will have something that they want you to build for them. Like that is a standard. The best answer is, hey, that's a great idea. We'll put it on the backlog and think about it, which is the startup CEO's response of like, I'm never going to build your feature, but you
Right,
should
right,
think
right.
about it. Or, hey, we'll put it on the backlog. We have to analyze it. We have to understand how it works for our general market. And sometimes you will get general features that will come out of it. So I tend not to say no early in the process. I tend to be more of a we'll see. And then you have to make the decision about is that a good strategy for the company itself. Where it will fall apart is poor requirements design. And you're constantly just trying to build something for them till they say, yeah, we're happy, versus being ultra clear up front about what you're building and disciplined in the engineering process for it.
You're saying putting a very specific scope of work. This is the A to Z of how this is going to go. Anything
Yeah,
outside of that, we need to redefine the scope and
correct. If you think the
charge you
scope of
more
work
money.
should be a
Yeah.
paragraph long, or if they're coming in and saying like, yeah, it's a paragraph of like scripts of text, that is a red flag. It should be
Yeah.
a 10-page document that includes Figma screenshots of what you're building. Like, so there is no ambiguity in terms of what you're building. And you can charge them an upfront fee if you want to build that specification. That's totally fine. But you want it down to the level of individual screens, functionality on those screens, and then you obviously want to be confident that you can build it. Generally, the process also of going through that design will in fact get you to something that often is reusable in your common source code base,
Yeah.
because you have a chance then to change how they think about it and influence it, versus if you just say yes or no without a specification process, they're going to have something in their head. And whatever they have in their head, it's not what you have in your head. Like
Right.
you're not on the same page with them. So there's some tools you could throw at that.
Yeah. So when we think about this idea of like, because we're talking a lot about like mindset for the founders, and maybe again, you could take it from a few different angles, but I'm kind of curious, like when you talk to someone that's early stage, they're doing, $100,000 ARR versus someone
Yeah.
doing 1 million ARR versus maybe 10 million. Those three different folks, even in the early, in terms of your early different segments, how is their mindset different? What are they thinking about? Or maybe what should they be thinking about that they're behind on?
So a startup CEO, sub $1 million in ARR, should only be thinking about product market fit. I would define product market fit as people are willing to pay you money for the product, not they tell you it's good. So a high quality level of product market fit.
Yep.
Are we onto a problem people are willing to pay us money to solve? Then have we gotten them to pay us money to solve it? So effectuating a sale and actually deploying software. And then to a fair amount, how are we going to keep that customer over a long period of time?
Okay.
And so it's actually more important that once you get the first customer, you have a solid customer success plan in place to retain them than it is that you get the second customer. Said differently, it's a bad sign if an early stage company is constantly churning customers, because it either means they're not onto something that's really a long-term problem, or they just don't know how to run a business. So anyways, startup company, pre-1 million in revenue, all you're running at as the CEO is, am I solving the right business problem for people that are willing to pay money for them, and can I keep them over time? That'll be depending on your ASP size, your first 20 customers, your first 20,000 customers, right? It sort of depends. Once you hit about 1 million in ARR, which is typically a trigger for a Series A, and it depends on capitalization structure of the company, but is a good trigger for a Series A. assuming you have enough market runway in front of you, which you should have math on at that point. And if you don't have math on, you needed to go back to the beginning and redo our process.
Right.
You're very much focused from 1 to 10 on making it highly repeatable. So that is the point at which you're optimizing the process and the unit economics for each individual customer. And you are making a machine that just gets new customers, gets them up and running on the software, and keeps them paying money for eternity. And repeatable means not only can you repeat it with the same outcome, but that your outcomes are getting better and better. So your ASPs are going up, your win rates are going up, your retention rates are going up. There's a couple ways to measure it, but those are the primary ones that you want to measure. So by the time you get to 10 million, your business is repeatable. Repeatable actually means that your business is predictable as well. And so that's the handmaiden of repeatability, is you can start to gaze into the future. And the better you are at predicting the future, the more your company is going to be worth. And there are real valuation implications of that. There are real operational implications of that. From 10 to 25, I start to think about that as the specialization stage. So prior to 10 million in ARR, you basically are running a monolithic organization. You might have department heads with different departments in areas, but everybody is running after the same thing. Like, we got to get more customers this quarter, we got to do whatever, we have a single product, etc. 10 to 25, it starts to be like, you've got departments. You've got marketing, and marketing runs their stuff, and that's one workflow stream. You've got sales, and sales runs their stuff, and that's one workflow stream. And marketing should have excellence in how they execute their marketing campaigns, and sales should have excellence in their executing campaign. And you as the CEO are not actively directing things. You are very much now managing a series of managers that is then executing it. So repeatability, you're very much in the operational weeds. Now you're actually out of the operational weeds. You've passed operational responsibilities down to a series of managers. And your job is now to make sure that we are all coordinated in how we're actually doing these things, and that the business strategy is clear, it's lined up with the product strategy and roadmap, et cetera. And then from 25 to 50 million is what I think of as sort of market leadership stage, which is, at this point, you are not just servicing current customers. You should be able to articulate a vision for where your space is going in the long term, and how you, the company, the CEO, et cetera, all people, are the force that drives that future forward. And so at this point, you have now earned the right to have a vision on the future of accessibility, the future of personal branding, whatever. You have not earned that right up until this point. And so now you're actually telling people, no, this is how you should be doing this. You are prescribing to your customers an approach for your business area. You can start to, you have enough power in the market to start to actually bend things in your direction, and you should be using that power effectively and judiciously. You are out of the day-to-day operations. You should not be writing code anymore at that point. You, as the CEO, really are almost always the conduit for the marketing leadership that's most effective. And we're trying to make you a visionary that then is translating your vision into strategy through your senior managers. And then finally, you get in kind of this 50 to 100 phase where you're really focused on then operational efficiency. So you have leadership of the market, you're continuing your efforts as a market leader, but now you're trying to refine the discipline of the business, not just to throw off growth. Prior to 50 million in ARR, really all you care about is growth, and the sins of burning cash is like forgiven. You can raise more cash indefinitely.
Right.
At 50 to 100 million, you don't necessarily have to generate cash, but it's got to be pretty clear that somewhere at the end of the rainbow, there is this huge fountain of cash that just constantly generates dollars. And that could be a function of gross operating margins, it could be a function of actual operating margins, et cetera. But you're much more concerned with the efficiency and efficacy of the operation in that versus the earlier phase. Again, most of it's going to be judged on growth. So startup phase, get customers, make sure you got a good product market fit. Repeatable phase, now you got to make sure that you can do that again and again and again, and it's highly predictable. Specialized phase, get yourself out of the operations, start managing them through a series of teams, specialize those teams into their different domains to make sure they're working properly. Market leader, you got a vision for the market, you know where the market is actually going, and now you're trying to bend much larger forces to the will of the company to go in that direction. And then efficiency is, how do I make this thing a machine that actually generates cash? because cash is ultimately what the companies are going to be valued on. And if you have
Mm.
a company that generates cash and grows fast, that's your rule of 40 solve. There's a little bit in there also about the appetite investors have at different stages.
Yeah.
Later stage investors do not have as much appetite for companies that don't generate cash, and that's simply because you can't lever those companies. So the returns on pure equity are tougher. Versus if a company has cash flow, you can lever those returns and you can just get better returns. And that's the same for you as an entrepreneur as well.
That's a tremendous breakdown, by the way. Thank you for kind of sharing that. That's really helpful. A couple follow ups because I know most of the people listening are probably in those first two categories. Let's say,
Mm-hmm.
um, how do you think of founder led sales? When should someone stop carrying the bag, if you will, as the founder, and
Yeah.
hand it off to a sales leader or sales team members? Do you have a general rule of thumb on that?
Never. It's very founder dependent, is the answer. Ideally, you are moving from so certainly any transactional components should be handed off as quick as possible. You don't need to be in red lines. You don't need to be in all those different conversations. And what you're very quickly trying to do is get yourself to the point where you can enter in a qualified sales conversation
Mm.
where they already know what your product is. So, like the basics of the sales process has been done. They're really at a decision point, and you can come in and articulate, here's kind of how we think about the world. Here's our philosophy. Here's why we like to do it. So, what you're coming in is like, you're not quite a closer, but what you're trying to do is instill a ton of confidence
Right.
in the customer that like, oh, senior management is here. If I have a problem, I can come to them. But more to the point, they really understand what my problem is and what they're solving for me. And they have they are buying you insofar
Right.
as they know that you will keep solving their problem for them at increasing levels and listen to them and give them comments. That can keep going well into $50 million, like an ARR. Probably it stops more around 25. What you want to hand off to a sales leader is all the process stuff that's associated with that. And a good sales leader will be much more of a process junkie than
Yeah.
somebody that goes and sells stuff. And so what I mean by that is they're like, okay, here are all the systems and the processes we're using to run the handoff motion through an SDR with the marketing team. Here's all the processes we're going to use to do sales driven outbound, generate new opportunities and accounts. Like they're the ones that should be running the day to day of that and the forecasting and all that. You should not be involved in any of that,
Yeah.
is my opinion. When does that handoff happen, though? I think practically you're going to be directly managing the sales function as a CEO, probably well into the repeatable stage.
Okay.
It's tough for you to hire a really good process oriented VP of sales, both from a cash perspective as well as from a does that candidate want to actually come work with you until you have something that's growing really fast and has some demonstrated growth.
Yeah.
Once you do get a good VP of sales in, though, you just want to be ultra specific and clear with them about like, here's what I want my role to be. Here's what I want your role to be. Like, use me when you need me. Here is what I want. And you also have to be very honest with yourself about when you actually want to be used, because you can't say to your sales VP, hey, pull me in when you need me, because they will
Yeah.
never pull you in because they don't want to look like they don't know what they're doing.
Right.
What you have to say to them is, this is the exact step of the sales process I want to be included at. Here are the rules for when I want you to pull me in. This is the deal size, etc. All the other ones, call me if you need me. But again, human nature is they actually won't call you when they need you
Right.
because they
Right.
don't want to look like they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah. Well, it's a good point though, and because again, being at a couple startups in my earlier years, there's so much value. Like when I brought in Rob, who was a co-founder of one of the companies, like when I would bring him in on the call, like everyone loved him. He was vision oriented. He could talk so much, and I was like, it's such a huge opportunity because I've talked with founders. I don't know if you have, like they shy away from, like, once they hand off the sales range, like they don't even want to talk to like customers anymore. And I'm like, you want to be right in front of them as much as possible because they actually see that this is your company, you've grown it. I think that's such
I,
a benefit.
I would agree. And what that is probably a bad founder company match. right? Like in my
Yeah.
opinion, one of the
Right.
things I look for B2B CEOs is
Yeah.
like, again, they're domain experts and they know how to sell.
Yeah.
And like, so if you don't
True.
know how
That's
to
right.
sell and
You
you
said
just
that.
want to go write code, that's fine. That means you're the CTO of the company.
Mm.
It doesn't mean you have to like it. You just have to do it. And so
Yeah.
like, that's the other thing you can coach the founders through. It's like, you know, we don't
Yeah.
expect you to be out there selling, but like, if we don't sell stuff, the company doesn't work.
Yeah.
And so I used to be much more in the technical mold, and over time have learned that you actually really need to be in the sales mold in most of these. There are exceptions to that. If you have a really unique go-to-market model, which is much more product-driven, that can change the dynamic for sure. You can build in some of that visionary talent into the sales team. The sales reps obviously are going to like that because they
Right.
like having a point of view that's educated on the market. But I agree with you. There does tend to be founder magic, and without any ego, people like talking to founders. They think it's
Right.
cool, and
Right.
so like there's a coolness factor to it. So I would. My bias is instead of trying to fight that or make it ambiguous, it's just a block in the sales process. And if you don't want to pull the founder in, that's fine. You don't have to, but you need to have checked these boxes to make sure that you're not imperiling the deal. But if you haven't checked the boxes, like you're way better to fail, with Tim or with Brian than without Tim or with Brian.
Yeah.
And most of the time that sorts itself out with the reps, because once the reps close the deal, that they're like, the people love the founder, they will call the founder again with no problem. It tends to be management that's a problem.
Yeah. It's a great point. Tim, we might have to do a part two if you're open to it. Like there's so many notes on here, some things I want to get to that we're not going to get to today because this is like a good like setting the table maybe. Let's end on this though. Is I'm big on action. It seems like you are too. What's an action item someone can take from this? Maybe it's a challenge to them, a question they should ask themselves about their business, something that they could do today or this week to get started on a better path.
The primary thing to me is, are you ultra clear on who you are selling to and what problem they have that they are willing to pay money to solve? And so I'll break that down a little further into, if I look at a company, I want to know the exact personas that they have listed as stakeholders. Stakeholders would be the group that includes your entire buying group, everyone that you impact in the buying process, plus your user group. We can have a wondrous debate about why we define it that way, but a full set of stakeholders. I want a detailed profile of them. I want to know where they're at in their career. I want to know what kind of pains they have. I want to know what things they actually care about. I want to know what stuff we solve that they care about, so I can map to the relevant pains, et cetera. I want to know how our features actually map into the pains that they care about, et cetera. So I want a very, very detailed view of the who that you have. And then I want the similar level of detail on the firmographic profile of who you're going after. I don't want you to tell me you're going after defense companies. I want you to tell me you're going after defense companies that are located in this geographic area. It could be North America, it's fine. But like, I want to know the geographic area. I want to know what size that company is. Is it every size of company? Are you going after only ones that have this amount?
Mm-hmm.
Helpful if you have technographic signals as well on the company. Hey, they have deployed this type of technology on their website, therefore we know that they have a budget for this, et cetera, in that profile. All of the firmographic data, though, should ultimately be taped out to an exact list of clients that you are going after. So I don't even want you to tell me, like, this is the market. You need to tell me the market, and then I need to see every single one of those customers in preferably your CRM, but it can be your marketing system or whatever, so that I know you know exactly who you're going after. And then I want to know who owns those customers and what stage of the process that they are at. And that also implies that you have a highly defined customer journey that goes from marketing to sales to onboarding to customer success. If you don't have that, copy ours. Just take one. Like, you don't actually have to have a perfect one, but you have to have one. And you have to be able to track the exact state of the account, to some extent the exact state of the person as well, but we can have a debate of that across that life cycle. From all of that, what I can do is then I can look at it and say, okay, here's how big your market is. We do the basic math we were talking about before, and we say, okay, are we going to, like, just mathematically, do we have a go-to-market plan that has a reasonable chance of getting us enough conversations to have a reasonable chance of getting us enough opportunities to have a reasonable chance of getting up enough closes. And then you can pretty easily translate that by dividing by 12 to get, okay, here's our monthly plan. And then we look at the monthly plan. Longer answer, but again, strictly what was the one thing I would look for, the one takeaway? I want to know exactly who is on your buying committee, ideally also your buyers. And then those are very detailed personas. You can generate them with AI. We've got tools to help you generate them. Like it's quick and easy, but you need to know exactly who you're selling to. You need to do the same with a firmographic profile taped out to the individuals, ideally, that you're going after. Slightly different answer on that would be a fully detailed go-to-market plan. Starts with a list of every single company you are targeting, every single person that matches a persona that you are interested in that company, and each of those people is tagged to the personas. That is the beginning of a sales and marketing plan. And then the question becomes, okay, how do I engender conversations with all of those different people in a way that makes sense to them?
Yeah. No, that's phenomenal. And it's going to make some people uncomfortable, probably like, oh, I've never done that. I never got into the weeds. But I think to your point, once you do it, it's going to open your eyes to like the market actually go after, and then actually have some educated conversations, at least educated outreach.
Very much, and that's a lot of the control software that we're building for these companies does that. So it's like it sounds onerous to do it, but we can put together some very simple AI assisted workflows that let you set them up quickly. And then invariably, you're also going to be wrong on some of those things. And so you got to be able to change quickly, probably on a quarterly basis as well. Another question you had about timing is that it's like these strategies take a while to pan out. Like, so you can't run a sales and marketing strategy for like 2 weeks and be like, oh, I know everything, I'm good. There are some very narrow exceptions to that. Generally, like you got to run a sales and marketing strategy for a quarter, for 2 quarters before you can really conclude that it's working or not. So that adds to the amount of time you got to run the company before you really know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. Well, that's some good takeaways for folks to think about. And Tim, this was a lot of fun, man. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this. And people can go check you out on LinkedIn. 1 to 100 numerical number one TO
the number 100.com. Awesome. And then I think I've got 1 to 100.coms on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn under Timothy Springer. Don't go to the Timothy Springer who's a virologist at Harvard. He's a great fellow, not me. Go to the entrepreneurial Tim Springer.
Thanks, dude. This was a lot of fun. I appreciate you.
Pleasure. We'll see you soon, man.